We were friends. That was our beginning. Or so we told ourselves whenever life got raw and painful. It's a strange thing, how easily the memory of friendship slips through your hands the moment betrayal surfaces. I remember pressing the record button on my old digital voice recorder. Click. A small red light flickered. And speaking those words, "We were friends." My voice sounded hollow, like the walls themselves were hungry for confessions. The tape started rolling in my home office at 2 a.m., mere hours after she returned from that so-called yoga retreat. Pause. I should rewind to an earlier scene, but my thoughts come in jumps, like skipping over skipping stones. The moment the doctor told me stress can manifest as genuine physical pain, I had one response. I felt it before I believed it. My chest, my ribs, the back of my neck. They felt as though some invisible clamp tightened a little more each day. Trust can be the greatest weapon you ever hand another person. Let them have it, and they'll carve your heart to ribbons without you seeing the blade. That's what happened to me. It started with a bruising tightness in my rib cage, and ended with me quietly filming her behind my phone screen, her tears flickering in the firelight. She came back that day glowing with a new tan, her hair pinned in a careless but practiced bun. "The yoga retreat was amazing," she said. "Life-changing." I kept quiet. My phone was in my pocket, audio recorder already going. Under my desk's glass surface, I had slid a photograph of us together in Paris, the flames of a cozy fireplace dancing behind our smiling faces. She saw the picture. Her eyes froze. She tried to look away, but there was another shot pinned on the bookshelf. Us in that bedroom we once redecorated to celebrate our 10th anniversary. Next photo was in the hallway, next in the living room. I'd scattered them everywhere, in every room, on every shelf. Like a museum to a life, she once told me was enough. Her jaw tightened. There was a jerk to her step, as though she suddenly wanted to run. She reached for her phone. Found no signal. I'd cut the Wi-Fi. I told her, "Use mine if you need to." But she just swallowed, said nothing. I watched. I let my arms hang at my sides because if I clenched my fists, I'd shake from the anger. Silence can be an avalanche. I wanted her to feel every crushing second of it. She asked me, "Where's the box?" in this small, trembling voice. She was talking about that little wooden chest where we kept old letters. My letters to her when we dated, her notes for me when I was away on business, clippings of ticket stubs, postcards from our time in Italy. She used to ask me these little domestic questions. "Have you seen my red scarf? Which brand of coffee did we buy?" But now it was all reduced to, "Where's the box?" She knew I'd heard her phone call. I left the door open on purpose. She'd been speaking softly, saying to someone, "He doesn't understand anything. He's clueless like a puppy." That line hammered in my brain. Clueless like a puppy. No, I was no puppy. Just a fool who had once offered her unconditional trust. I gave her the box without a word. She took it to the fireplace, tossed in the letters, our sentimental scraps, our entire shared history that used to smell of her favorite perfume. For a second, she hesitated, as if part of her wanted to rescue them. But then she threw in a photo or two, watched them curl in the flame, eyes glistening with tears. My chest hurt again, that clamp on my ribs. I recorded every second, phone camera capturing the reflection of fire on her face. I didn't say a damn thing. I just stared. Silent. My mind was half numb, half on fire. Then, in staccato bursts, my memory leaps to the day I first confirmed she was cheating. I got off work early, pulled into our driveway, and recognized a strange black SUV parked a few houses down. The engine was still warm, as though it had arrived moments before. I walked in quietly and headed upstairs. The bedroom door was ajar. I heard her muffled laughter, a throaty, intimate sound I hadn't heard from her in a long time. I froze, that clamp around my ribs becoming a vice. Then a creak of the bed, a whisper, her whisper, pitched low, breathy. Another voice, male, responding. My body just seized. My chest ached with each heartbeat, but I still crept closer. I had to see. What I saw was her with him. Ethan, a guy I'd met just once at some photography exhibit. I recognized the swirl of his tattoo as he leaned over her on the sheets. She was half-draped in a thin satin robe, parted at the thigh, revealing more than I could handle in that second. His hand moved on her leg, sliding up. She gasped, arching toward him, biting her lip. Their faces were close, eyes locked, breath merging. It was intimate in that raw, unfiltered way that's unmistakable. When he pressed his mouth to her neck, she made a small moan that stabbed me deeper than any blade. That's the moment I should have stormed in or done something. Instead, I stood paralyzed. My mind replayed years of marriage in a flicker, all the times I thought she only had eyes for me. My body was trembling with rage and heartbreak, but in my silence, I discovered a rancid corner of my soul that wanted to watch, to gather proof. I closed my eyes a second later, like I was looking into an eclipse, a thing too dangerous to see straight on. My entire existence was unraveling in that bedroom. I backed down the hall as quietly as I come. Drove away. For hours, I sat in my car at a lonely rest stop, staring at the window. My phone lay in my lap. I typed messages I never sent. I fought the roiling nausea in my stomach. That clamp tightened on my ribs again. Every breath made me want to either scream or sob. In the end, I did neither. I swallowed every guttural cry, burying it with a vow. She'd regret betraying my trust. She'd know it was a weapon I could turn on her. When she burned those letters, I was proud of myself for not screaming. She asked me in a hoarse whisper, "Did you always know?" She was trying to see if I had some heartfelt meltdown brewing. But I just coughed, feeling the tension in my lungs, and said, "No." That was it. In my head, I was replaying the sight of her parted robe on that bed. The memory hammered me with each breath. But I wouldn't let her see me break. The moment the last letter turned to ashes, she sank to her knees, face turned away from me. I took a step closer. I could see her shoulders quivering, but I felt more numbness than pity. She started to speak. It was never. But I cut her off by raising a single hand. Silence. The camera phone was still rolling in my pocket, capturing the crackling flames, her broken posture, the waver in her breath. This was my story now. I was going to make it known. People sometimes ask, how do you get revenge on someone you love? The real question is, how do you not? Because once trust is shattered, all that's left is a primal need to show them you're not the helpless puppy they thought. That night, I created a TikTok account titled 100 Days with My Cheating Wife. Each day, I planned to post short, tight-lipped videos of her. Nothing sexual. Nothing beyond glimpses of her regret or frustration or tears, but always underlined with some mocking tune, a light comedic track that made the heartbreak ironically comedic to viewers. I knew it was vicious. I knew it might ruin her, but it was also the only way I could breathe without that clamp snapping my ribs. During her sleep, if you can call that half-sleepless tossing rest, I'd intercept her phone. She was too rattled to change her passcodes. I hijacked her social media. Instagram, email. She had messages from him, from Ethan. I replied to him from her account. I need you. I'm willing to risk everything. He responded, I don't want you to destroy your life over me. I pinned that reply to the top of her profile for all her followers to see. Dozens of likes and .dtf. Comments poured in. She woke up to find her notifications exploding. She scrambled to do damage control, but I changed her passwords. She had to watch, powerless, as her DMs lit up with confusion, pity, outrage. The hum of adrenaline in me overshadowed any guilt. This was my war zone, and I was done holding back. It's funny how, in the quiet aftermath, I felt more at peace than I had in years. I'd lie on the couch, close my eyes, and drift into an oddly restful sleep, while she tossed on our king-size mattress upstairs, alone in the bed that once belonged to us. If she ventured downstairs in the night, She'd see me lying there with a half smile, eyes half open. I'd say nothing. She'd just stand in the darkness, the glow of a street lamp on her tear-stained face. Then she'd turn and creep back up, unsure how to face me. In the mornings, we had these stilted interactions. She'd stand by the kitchen sink, a coffee mug trembling in her hand. I'd watch her. Silence. The steam from her coffee coiled around her face like a ghost. Once she finally spoke. "Are you going to talk to me?" I set down my phone, turned my eyes to her, and repeated the question she once asked me years ago, when I had a moment of cold feet about an anniversary trip. "Why are you hesitating? If you loved me, you'd come clean." She blinked, recognition hitting her. That's exactly what she had said to me in a heated argument about some petty issue. I repeated it now with the same tone. She swallowed, eyes darting. Then her coffee spilled, a small splash on the counter. She cursed quietly. "Oh my gosh," but let the coffee drip. We both stared. Her next words died in her throat. Silence again. I caught glimpses of my reflection in the hallway mirror and barely recognized the man I was becoming. The lines around my mouth deepened. A tension had settled in my jaw. This bitterness was new, but it felt oddly like the shield I needed. My father used to say, "A real man never needs to raise his voice." The quiet can be more devastating than any scream. The final straw for her, I think, was the day she discovered I'd personally visited Ethan at one of his photography exhibitions, under the guise of wanting to commission a portrait. He was easy to track. He's a well-known freelance photographer, living that half-glamour, half-broke artist life, drifting from city to city. I spotted him in a small gallery, tall, lean, that casual style. He had no idea who I was. The place smelled of fresh paint and newly printed brochures. People chatted around us, wine glasses in hand. I approached him with a composed smile, ignoring the swirl of acid in my stomach. "Hey, I admire your work," I said, tapping the corner of a black and white photograph he'd shot. He turned to me, friendly enough. In the background, you could hear the subdued hum of a guitar track playing over the gallery speakers. I introduced myself with a pseudonym, a name I'd used before in college pranks. He offered me his business card, the one featuring that little camera with wings icon matching the tattoo on his arm. I let my eyes linger on that design. He looked at me curiously. "You from around here?" I just nodded. My chest was tight. I wanted to smash his face, but I forced a small grin, commented on the photography's composition, the use of negative space. He lit up talking about it, as if we were potential collaborators. I pretended to be enthralled. I left after a few minutes, politely shaking his hand, filming the entire encounter with a hidden camera in my shirt pocket. That night, I posted a TikTok segment, Day 15. A short clip of me shaking the lover's hand, superimposed with text that read, "He doesn't know." Then a snippet of my wife's face from earlier, eyes half dead with regret. The likes soared. People ate it up, some as entertainment, some as a cautionary tale, some as downright savage voyeurism. But I was no longer worried about the moral high ground. My heartbreak overshadowed any moral debate. The clamp on my ribs had eased a fraction, replaced by a cold satisfaction. In the evenings, she hovered around me as though searching for a chance to apologize, or at least humanize herself. My phone was never out of reach. She tried to talk me out of posting more. She pleaded softly, "You're hurting both of us. Don't do this." I felt the words rumble in my gut, like a caged animal that wanted to roar. But I kept calm, stared at her for a long moment, then repeated a question she once hurled at me in the early years of our relationship. "Are you done lying?" She recognized it, inhaled sharply, tears welling. I turned away, letting the silence settle once more. At night, the physical pain was worst. My legs cramped, my neck stiffened. I'd sit up in bed, the couch, and roll my shoulders, half expecting an actual blade to be embedded there. My chest felt bruised from the inside. I started popping painkillers, hoping to dull both the physical throttling and the mental anguish. My father once told me heartbreak can literally kill a man if he holds it in too long. Maybe he was right. Some nights, I thought of climbing in my car and just driving until the sun rose. But I never did. Instead, I curated more of those photos from our happiest days. I placed them in random spots for her to find, a constant reminder of what she'd destroyed. I couldn't let her forget. Maybe that was cruel, or maybe it was justice. One day, she confronted me near the fireplace, the same place where she'd burned the letters. Her hair was disheveled, eyes rimmed with red from sleeplessness. She wore an old t-shirt, something that used to belong to me, and she clutched the edges like it was her final armor. "Talk to me," she begged in a shaky voice. "I know you're hurting." "Let's just—" "Hurting?" I interrupted, letting out a hollow laugh. "You think you can measure this pain?" I pressed a hand to my chest. My voice dropped. "You asked me once, a long time ago, if I'd ever keep secrets from you. Remember your exact words." She swallowed, silent. I continued. "You said, secrets are the bullets, and trust is the trigger. Don't ever load them both. Funny how you ended up pulling that trigger yourself." She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I never wanted it to turn out like this," she said. "I swear, But I didn't let her finish. I took a step back, letting the hush expand between us. My whole body was taut, that old clamp feeling reappearing, but I refused to show any sign of physical weakness. She reached out to touch my arm, but I recoiled. The memory of her parted robe with him seared through my mind. I turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the flickering glow of half-burned logs. A few days later, I discovered Ethan's new message in her email. He wanted to talk, said he was feeling guilty. He wrote, "I can't bear the idea of hurting you more. I've never been in such a twisted situation." I read it, reread it, felt a wave of cold fury. Then I typed a brief response. "You can't hurt me any more than you already have. Let's meet." The next day, he suggested a small downtown cafe, ironically called Serenity's Brew. I decided to go. This time, no hidden identity. I wanted him to see me, Michael Carter, the clueless puppy the husband scorned. I arrived early. The place was cozy, warm wood paneling, a gentle hum of conversation. I sat by the window, ignoring the barista's polite greeting. The clamp on my ribs was the tightest it had been in weeks. My hand trembled around the coffee cup. Then Ethan walked in, wearing jeans and a leather jacket, scanning the room with uneasy eyes. When he spotted me, I lifted a hand in acknowledgement. He approached, uncertain. I saw him glance at my wedding ring. I remembered seeing that ring in a reflection once, a reflection of me, naive and proud. Now it felt like a brand. He spoke first. "Michael? Look, I'm sorry. Sit down." I cut him off. He complied. I noticed the lines of tension in his face. Maybe he wasn't purely a callous man. But that didn't matter. "Why?" I asked plainly, not raising my voice. "Why her?" He fumbled for words. "We connected. It's not." He exhaled. "I didn't want to break your marriage. I kept telling her to reconsider. But she said you were distant. She said things were already broken, that you wouldn't care." My jaw clenched. I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "You believed her." He winced. "I believed she needed something you weren't giving her." Then he paused, looking at my hands, my posture. "But now I see this was all a lie. Or, at least, she wasn't honest with me either." I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. The cafe was filled with normal people sipping lattes, chatting about normal things. And here we were, two men discussing the shards of my marriage. "I guess it's easier to cheat if you paint the other person as the villain," I said softly. I never wanted to be the bad guy. He said it in such a quiet voice, I almost pitied him. Then he added, "I'm done. I told her I'm leaving. I told her we can't go on. She can fix things with you, or whatever. I just don't want to live like this. I let silence hang. Then I took out my phone, placed it on the table. The little camera lens stared up at him. And you think that erases everything? He swallowed. Look, man, you have every right to hate me. I get it. But I'm out. I'm sorry. He rose from the chair, turned away. I didn't try to stop him. Watching him leave felt anticlimactic, like that final chord in a sad song that no one wanted to sing. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch, flipping through a stack of old photos, one she hadn't managed to burn. I recognized a shot from our wedding, the one with her leaning over to whisper in my ear, both of us laughing at a private joke. She wore jeans and a plain t-shirt now, hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. I stood in the doorway, uncertain. She looked up, and I realized tears were streaming down her face. Her lips parted, but no words came. We sat in silence, heavy and suffocating. Finally, in a quiet voice, she asked, "Do you remember the question I asked you when we got engaged?" I stared blankly. She said, "I asked if you'd ever let me down, and you said, 'Never, not in 1,000 years.' And I believe you." She pressed a hand to her temple. We were so young. I never thought we'd hurt each other like this. I felt an ache so deep, it felt like my bones were splintering from within. My father's voice echoed in my mind. Heartbreak can kill a man. For a moment, I wanted to abandon all this vengeance. I wanted to hold her and sob. But the memory of her with Ethan was still fresh, its poison not yet drained. So I said nothing, letting her words disappear into the hush. Time can do strange things to pain. It doesn't heal it. Not really. It erases details, blurs edges, but the wound remains. My footsteps led me to the kitchen. She followed slowly, as if drawn by some final sense of confrontation. She stood behind me while I rummaged for painkillers in the cabinet. My body was so tense that moving felt like pushing through heavy mud. Finally, I turned, faced her, and asked, "Why him?" The same question I'd asked him. But I needed to hear her answer. Her eyes closed. "He listened to me," she said. "He saw me as someone interesting, not just a wife or a prop. I felt needed, alive, and I was scared you never looked at me that way anymore." A shudder rippled through me. "So your solution was to tear us apart?" She flinched. "I never thought I'd go that far. But once it started, I don't know. I knew it was wrong, but it felt too late." She paused, voice shaking. "And you were always so strong. I felt you drifting. And I was afraid." I exhaled. "You wanted me to see you. Congratulations. I see you now." Her breath caught. Silence again. I felt the swirl of my own contradictory emotions, love and fury tangling like barbed wire. The air smelled of stale coffee and dish soap. She took a step closer, her arm grazing mine. "What do we do now?" she asked, voice quavering. I didn't have an answer. I just stared at her, the memory of that bedroom scene flickering in my mind. Then I took my phone, pressed record, capturing her image right here, in the cold kitchen light. She looked away, tears on her cheeks. "Stop," she whispered. "Stop filming." I didn't. For a moment, we both stood there, trapped in that lens. It was symbolic of all the times I had chosen to remain silent and watch her from a distance. But now the silence was my weapon, and trust was the bullet. That night, I posted another video, day 30. I'd captured a close-up of her eyes, red and wet, as she begged me to put the phone away. The text I overlaid read, "If only she'd asked me to put my heart away first." The comments soared. Some viewers sympathized, others ridiculed, but every like felt like a salve to my wounded pride. Eventually, the internet had its fill. Some called me monstrous, others said she deserved it. My revenge was a public spectacle. But revenge never truly satisfies. You feed on it, but you stay hungry. Maybe that's why I was so physically sore, so beaten down. As if my body was punishing me for the cruelty in my spirit, came a day she walked into my office, placed her phone on my desk, and said in a shaking voice, "Change it back. Change my passwords. I can't deal with this." I refused. She lifted her chin, tears threatening to fall, and repeated the question from a year ago, when I once promised her unconditional support. "Will you stand by me?" She was throwing my own words back at me, the words that had once consoled her. "Will you stand by me?" I almost laughed at the bitter irony. "Shouldn't you have asked yourself that before you slept with him?" Her face crumpled, and she sank into the chair across from me. Her entire posture was hunched, like a beaten dog. I could see every tremor in her fingers. I turned the chair slightly so I wouldn't have to meet her eyes. The clamp in my ribs tightened until it felt like I might pass out. When I finally looked at her, all I saw was the woman who had once been my best friend, the person I used to stay up with until dawn, sharing secrets. That memory slammed into me, stirring grief more than anger. "Why do you care?" I asked. "Aren't you heading off to some new retreat or some new fling?" She shook her head. "I'm done running. I want you to stop this public humiliation. If you ever loved me." I cut in. "Oh, don't talk about love. You ended that conversation when you let him into our bed." She flinched like I'd slapped her. For a moment, we just stared at each other, eyes locked. Then something shifted in the air. It was as though we both felt the final snap of an invisible thread. She rose to her feet, walked out, and for the next few hours, I didn't see or hear her. Part of me wondered if she'd just leave. Maybe that's what I wanted. But the house remained silent. Before dawn, I woke up on the couch again, drenched in sweat. My chest felt like it was on fire. I gasped for breath, my heart pounding. For a moment, I thought I might be dying. I stumbled to the bathroom, turned on the tap, splashed cold water on my face. My reflection was that of a man undone by heartbreak and consumed by revenge. Red eyes, haggard lines around my mouth, shoulders sagging under a weight I couldn't name. My father's warning rang again in my skull. Heartbreak can kill. I found her in the backyard at sunrise, wearing one of my old jackets, her arms wrapped around herself. Eyes distant. Without a word, I sat next to her on the stoop. The dawn was cold, turning the sky a pale orange. For a while, we watched the neighborhood come to life. Sprinklers ticking on, birds flitting across telephone wires. Finally, I asked, "Are we irreparable?" Her voice was low. "I don't know. I've made so many mistakes." She swallowed, shivering. "I can't expect you to forgive me. But She paused, her hand clenching the jacket's sleeve. "I never thought I'd lose my best friend." Something tightened in my chest. I felt tears threaten to blur my vision. "We were friends," I murmured, echoing the first words I ever recorded for my tape. "That's what we told ourselves. But look what that friendship became." I heard my voice break. The hush that followed was heavier than any words. We stayed that way, two broken people in a silent dawn, sharing a single regretful breath. Later, I stepped inside, phone in hand, ready to upload the next video. I paused, staring at the screen. My finger hovered over the post button. Something inside me just cracked. A wave of nausea twisted my stomach. I realized I wasn't sure who I was punishing anymore, her or me. The face in the phone's reflection was unrecognizable. My mouth was drawn tight, eyes cold. She had betrayed me, but I had harnessed that betrayal to become this relentless tormentor. My chest burned, so I rummaged for the painkillers, popped 2 more. Then I took a shaky breath, exhaled. The clamp around my ribs refused to ease. After a full minute, I closed the TikTok app without posting. My hands shook. For the first time in weeks, I didn't rush to humiliate her. I found her upstairs in the bedroom, that same place I'd once stood in horror, hearing her with him. Now she stood by the window, half lit by the gray morning sun. Her arms were crossed as if trying to hold herself together. I approached quietly, noticing how battered she looked. The lines of stress around her mouth mirrored my own. I braced myself for the wave of fury, but it was overshadowed by exhaustion. I spoke. "I'm done with the videos." She turned, startled. I went on. "I'm not posting anything else. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not even sure I can. But this revenge is eating me alive. It's got to stop before it kills me." She stared at me with wide eyes. I don't know what to say," she managed. "Don't say anything." I felt the tightness in my ribs surge, then loosen slightly, as if acknowledging that I was finally releasing my white-knuckled grip on vengeance. "Just give me space." She nodded, tears pooling but not falling. I left the room. For the next few days, we coexisted like two wary ghosts in a house haunted by old joys. I used the time to gather my thoughts, figure out the next move. The silence persisted between us, but it was less combative, more like a weary truce. I took down some of the photos. I let her log into her email again. I changed her Instagram password back, though I didn't mention it. Let her discover that on her own. This wasn't me caving. I was just done slicing open the wound. Every day that clamp on my ribs loosened a little more. One afternoon, I found her in the kitchen, discarding old receipts, junk mail, and the last remnants of those once cherished letters that never fully burned. She looked up when I entered. "I didn't know how to approach you," she said, her voice hushed. "Thank you for stopping." I was losing my mind. I said nothing, just reached for a glass, filled it with water. I drank slowly, letting the quiet speak. Then I turned to her, and for the first time, a real question slipped out. "Is there anything left of us to save?" My voice was flat, but my heart pounded. She hesitated, as though searching for a safe answer. Finally, she said, "That depends on whether you can ever see me as something other than a traitor." I set the glass down. "I see you as someone who broke me," I said. "I see you as a woman who was once everything to me. And then she made me nothing." I paused, each breath sending a dull ache through my side. "But I also see how I became something cruel. And I hate that man too." Her eyes welled again, a trembling exhale escaping her. She gave a small nod, acknowledging her part in what we'd become. "Time doesn't heal," I said quietly. "It just erases. Eventually, we forget the details. But I can't forget. Not yet." We stood facing each other in that kitchen, where so many breakfasts and dinners had once felt warm, intimate. Now it was like a stage for our tragedy. I felt tears pressing at the corners of my eyes. I glanced away, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles whitened. "I'm so tired," I admitted. "And it doesn't stop hurting." She approached carefully, reached out, and placed a tentative hand on my arm. I almost shrugged it off. But the faint warmth of her touch, it reminded me of gentler times. My shoulders slumped. In that moment, it felt like we reached some final threshold. Whether we'd take a step toward rebuilding or walk away forever, I didn't know. But at least we stood there, two shattered people acknowledging that the ugliness had run its course. She opened her mouth, started to speak, but no sound came out. Silence again. Maybe that was the best we could do. Days passed, slow but with fleeting moments of clarity. I kept the recorded files, but I didn't watch them. She tried to talk to me a few times, each conversation halting and raw. We started discussing practical steps, selling the house maybe, taking time apart. A counselor, maybe. We tossed around the idea with caution, like we were handling shards of glass. Neither of us was sure if a future together was even possible, but we both recognized that neither of us wanted to remain in that stalemate of cruelty. At last, one evening, we sat by the fireplace where she'd burned our memories. The mantle still showed signs of char. She took a deep breath, said, "I don't expect you to give me your trust again. But if we can't talk, we'll just kill each other slowly." I nodded, the pain in my body a constant reminder of how close I'd come to self-destruction. "I don't know if trust is even on the table," I said quietly. "All I know is, I can't breathe when I'm around you. But I can't imagine leaving everything behind either. Her eyes flickered with sadness. I'll move out, she offered in a small voice. If that's what you want. I pressed my palms to my eyes, fighting off the swirl of emotion. Maybe we both need to step away. My breath caught in my throat. I forced the next words out. I loved you. And I've spent the last weeks punishing you for loving someone else. But I can't tell if I'll ever see you as the woman I married. She let out a broken sob, but quickly stifled it. I understand, she whispered. We sat in the hush, listening to the crackle of the fire. I let my hand rest on the seat between us, not touching her but close enough to feel her warmth. Eventually, I spoke in a shaky tone. I want closure, or a shot at something new. But I can't do this in the same house, with the same memories creeping up on me. She nodded. I'll give you whatever time you need. We didn't speak more that night. Instead, we let the fire burn down to embers. In the dim glow, I quietly ended my last TikTok post with a final short clip of the flames. No faces, no mocking text, just the dying fire. I captioned it, "The End." Comments flared up, but I didn't read them. For me, it was the final punctuation mark on my revenge. Later, as I lay on the couch, the clamp around my ribs seemed to loosen, just a hair. And I realized my exhaustion was deeper than I'd known. Sleep took me quickly, free of the usual nightmares. In the morning, I found her downstairs, a suitcase by her side, coat thrown over one arm. She wore no makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked frail, but resolute. We locked eyes. She said softly, "I'll go stay at my sister's, or a hotel. Doesn't matter. You can have the house. I need you to know I'm sorry." I opened my mouth, then closed it. My heart pounded, but I couldn't speak. Sometimes words fail you right when you need them most. She gently picked up the suitcase, moved toward the front door. Her footsteps were painfully quiet. I felt like I should do something, say something, but I remained still, arms at my sides, my chest throbbing. She opened the door, paused, and glanced back, with a tear slipping down her cheek. Then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. In that final hush, I sat on the couch, phone in my lap, breathing raggedly. For the first time in weeks, the house felt truly empty. My entire body hurt, like I'd run a marathon with cracked bones. The tape recorder in my desk still had hours of audio, but I didn't press play. Instead, I pressed the power button, letting it all shut down. Silence. No more confessions, no more twisted monologues. Time doesn't heal. It erases. It wears away the details until we can only remember them in scattered shapes and colors. Days might become months. Months become years. Eventually, the rawness of betrayal fades into a dull ache, and even that ache might vanish one day. But for now, I only knew that I'd reached the end of one story and had no idea if another one would begin. Or maybe it already had. This new, uncertain chapter of my life without her. Without them. Without the illusions. The last thing I recall is stepping out onto the porch, letting the morning air fill my lungs. My chest still hurt, but it felt a fraction lighter. The sky had that particular bright hue that signals a fresh start, though I wasn't sure if I believed in fresh starts anymore. I turned off my phone. No more videos, no more watchers. Just me, the quiet, and a single persistent heartbeat that might one day find a way to trust again, even if trust is the deadliest weapon we can offer another person.